Namaste everyone, Pratima here. So this is the all-new 2023 edition of the Zenbook 14 Flip from Asus that I've been testing for a little over 2 weeks now. It has got everything you'd want on a premium 2-in-1 laptop, including a powerful processor, a beautiful OLED touchscreen, and a decent battery life, all in a package that weighs just 1.5 kgs. Its price starts at $1,000 in the US and around 1 lakh rupees in India. And for that price, if you're in the market for a reliable 2-in-1 laptop, I think this guy should definitely be on your radar. Let me tell you why. Okay, when it comes to ultrabooks, you might know that I'm not a big fan of flashy, over-the-top design choices. I like to keep things nice and simple. But there's just something about the Zenbook Flip that really resonates with me somehow. The shiny angular Asus logo along with a little Zenbook branding at the bottom adds some much needed character to this machine, and I am quite fond of it. I also didn't have to worry about fingerprint smudges or anything here. And since this is a premium Zenbook laptop after all, its build quality is also top-notch, consisting of an all-metal chassis. What about durability then? That's always been something of a concern with 2-in-1 laptops. Well, the Zenbook 14 Flip has impressed me on that front as well. It passes the usual military-grade durability test, sure, but more importantly, this 360-degree hinge is incredibly sturdy too. As a result, I've had no trouble using it in either laptop, tent, stand, or tablet mode. For such a compact 2-in-1 laptop, the Zenbook 14's I/O selection deserves an equal amount of praise. You get a couple of Thunderbolt 4 ready USB-C ports on the right, both capable of accepting USB power delivery or connecting 4K or even 8K external displays. Then there's a full-sized HDMI 2.1 and a 3.5mm combo audio jack, while a lone USB 3 Gen 2 Type A port sits on the left. And despite the laptop's thin profile, I like how Asus has not used a drop-jaw USB port here. The display here is a stunner too. You're looking at a 14 inches 2.8K glossy OLED touchscreen with a 90Hz refresh rate and a tall 16:10 aspect ratio, which is also Pantone validated for color accuracy. Oh, and this is the only display configuration that Asus has for this laptop, by the way, but I must say that I did not mind the lack of multiple options here. That's because I think 2.8K has the perfect trade-off between sharpness and battery life. Neither does it look pixelated, nor it is too heavy on the battery. It's a win-win. Anyway, I guess I don't need to tell you how beautiful this OLED display is. From lively colors to punchy contrast and everything in between, I absolutely love this screen. The company's claim of 100% DCI-P3 color gamut did come a bit short on our testing at 99%, but that's nothing. Weirdly enough, our Zenbook 14 Flip fell short on brightness measurements too. Asus scored 400 nits of peak brightness, but it maxed out at 361 nits only. It's not a deal breaker since it is more than bright enough for comfortable indoor usage. Other than this, because of the incredible color coverage and that Pantone validation, this display is perfectly workable for someone like graphic designers, photo editors, or just about anyone that needs a color-accurate screen. Asus is also well ahead of our concerns regarding OLED burn-in with a couple of preventive features like pixel refresh and pixel shift built in. Anyway, to make the most out of this touchscreen, you'll need a stylus too. Thankfully, Asus ships one in the box itself, but unlike the ones you get in Asus Chromebooks or something like the Galaxy S23 Ultra, there is no built-in compartment for this stylus, which means I have to carry it around separately. I guess making space for this circular pen is not really possible on a thin Ultrabook like this one. A flat and thinner stylus would have done the trick, but this is a device that's targeted towards digital artists and such, for which a pen with a circular form factor like this one makes for a more comfortable experience while using for longer hours. Nonetheless, the input latency of this stylus is quite minimal and it is pressure sensitive as well. You also get a couple of extra nibs with different hardness levels for a more realistic drawing experience. Likewise, one thing that's really stuck with me about this stylus is that I can switch to the next page in my PowerPoint presentation directly by clicking the top button. As for the keyboard, the Zenbook 14 Flip has got the usual key layout that I know and love, with a solid 1.4 mm travel distance and soft, bouncy feedback. I've had no trouble maintaining my usual typing speed on this thing. Its noise profile is on the quiet side, so that is good too. Oh, and since this laptop has an Argo Lift hinge that raises the keyboard deck a little, I also find it much more comfortable to type on than other ordinary laptops with a flat base. However, an even keyboard backlighting is still something that Asus struggles with. I feel like I've been complaining about it in basically every one of our Asus laptop reviews, but here we are. This glass trackpad is pretty great though. It is smooth and spacious enough for all sorts of gestures, scrolling or pinch and zoom actions. The integrated buttons have solid feedback, and Asus has also thrown in its digital numpad here. While that's a great way to bring the numpad experience on a 14-inch chassis, the number of times I unknowingly triggered it daily was rather annoying. The one silver lining is that there's an option in the My Asus app that lets me disable the digital numpad. Zenbook 14 Flip's audio setup is fantastic too. No, it does not have front-firing stereo speakers or anything, but its sound output is far better than most other Windows laptops I've tested in this price bracket. With a spacious, almost surrounding sound profile that lets you enjoy the details in all sorts of music, the multimedia experience on this laptop is awesome. I did not expect it, but there was even a bit of oomph in its base. In the past year or so, we've come a long way from the crappy 720p webcams on Windows machines. Who would have thought a global pandemic is what it would take for laptop makers to finally ship decent cameras? And that's exactly what Asus did here. You get a proper Full HD camera here that's great for casual video calls or online classes. The onboard array microphones do a good job of picking the audio, and Asus has also offered a bunch of features like background blur or motion tracking to enhance your video call experience. Okay, let's now get into the performance side of things. The Zenbook 14 Flip is powered by Intel's latest 13th Gen P-series CPUs, which, if you're not aware, lies between the low-powered U-series and high-performance H-series lineup. Here, you can choose between Core i5 1340p or Core i7 1360p processors, and the memory options include 8 or 16 GB of LPDDR5 RAM. But as expected from a compact 2-in-1 device, the RAM is soldered into the motherboard here, so make sure you get the 16 GB variant. The storage is upgradable though, and you can get it with either 512 GB or 1 TB of M.2 NVMe SSD by default. Interestingly, Asus had gone with H-series processors in last year's Zenbook 14 Flip, which is relatively more powerful than the P-series of Intel CPUs on this machine. So, is there actually a downgrade in performance here somehow? Well, technically, yes, but it's a meaningful and sensible downgrade when you really think about it. You see, these two lineups of Intel processors have vastly different power requirements, with the H-series CPUs eating up more than 50% power even when operating at base frequencies. Although that's not an issue for gaming or creator laptops, you'd be basically wasting all that power in a 2-in-1 laptop like this, which means the battery life is needlessly taking a hit, whereas the cooling system gets worked up for nothing since there isn't enough thermal headroom in such compact laptops either. So settling with Intel's P-series processors that have much more manageable power requirements is 100% the right move in my opinion. If that's the case, why not just go with U-series CPUs that are even less power hungry then? That's a valid point, but for me, those Intel processors are well suited for budget laptops only. As in, they handle everyday tasks like web browsing, working on Office suite of applications, video streaming and such with no trouble. But when pushing them up a notch just a little bit with creative apps like Photoshop, such low-powered CPUs struggle to keep up with your work. So keeping that in mind, I am definitely thankful for that extra bit of performance leeway here. Even on battery power, the Zenbook 14 Flip shows no sign of struggle on all my usual chores. And I really like how cool and quiet this thing stays too. Even at the highest fan profile, the fan noise is barely audible in a typical office setting like ours. Now, since this laptop relies on the integrated Iris Xe graphics, don't expect it to breeze through something like video editing or gaming. It's good enough to edit short-form 1080p projects or play light games like CSGO, Asphalt 9 and Fall Guys at 1080p, but that's about it. Moving on, the battery life on this year's Zenbook 14 Flip gets a nice upgrade too. Asus has managed to bump the battery from 63 Wh to 75 Wh here, that too without any significant weight gain, so that is quite impressive. As a result, I was constantly averaging 6 hours of screen on time while using this laptop at around 70% brightness with the battery mode set to balanced. That's pretty great. For charging, you get this 65 watt AC adapter in the box that takes the battery from 0 to 100% in around 3 hours. By the way, you can also use a 65 watt or higher wattage power delivery charger to charge this laptop. Okay, summing it all up, the 2023 edition of the Asus Zenbook 14 Flip OLED is a fantastic 2-in-1 laptop. There is absolutely zero doubt about that. It manages to impress on all essential fronts like performance, display, design, battery life, and more, while also edging out the competition like Samsung's Galaxy Book 3 Pro 360, the MSI Summit Flip 14 Evo, and HP Spectre X360 in terms of the price. So if you're in the market for a solid premium convertible laptop without breaking the bank, then the Zenbook 14 Flip OLED is an easy recommendation from me. Now, this thing is not perfect in any way, obviously. Apart from all the minor complaints I talked about earlier, there are a few other things I wish Asus did differently, like including a physical camera kill switch, for example, or not including bloatware apps like McAfee antivirus. But you know what? These are such small, ignorable complaints that they shouldn't stop you from getting this otherwise awesome 2-in-1 laptop. So guys, that was all for this video. We're planning on bringing a lot of laptop related content in the near future. So please stay subscribed to Gadget Byte to watch all that. Till then, I'm Pratima and thank you so much for watching.